Hey everyone, welcome back. So today I just wanted to give a quick update and then talk about some skills, what I think are the most important skills that a guitarist can work on. So this past several months has been really busy for me. I did some tour dates down into New Mexico on a couple occasions, and then I played for the first time in Boston for two private concerts that I did out there. And yeah, everything's been going amazing. Just really had a lot of support from concert attendees, and I think people were really pleased about the repertoire that I'm playing. Currently I'm doing music by Eduardo Sainz de la Mata, as well as Antonio Lauro, and an arrangement of one of the cello suites by Bach. And then every once in a while, if I have a vocalist that I'm able to collaborate with, we'll also do some Mexican popular songs by Manuel Maria Ponce. Other things that are going on. So I sort of plan my year so that I'm doing a lot of concert prep at the beginning of the year. So in January, February, and March, I'll tend to just kind of like bunker down and learn new repertoire, really practice it, really get to where I'm ready to do a long run of performances through the spring and summer. And then similarly at the end of the year, as we get into the fall, like especially into November and December, I'll aim to get more into technical practice and a little bit of listening and kind of designing my concert for the upcoming year. So with that, I'm kind of going into this phase, I guess, of technical practice and repertoire study. And I thought this would be a good moment to discuss different skills, particularly skills relating to musicianship that I think are useful to develop at any point in your career. And there's always ways that you can build upon these. So I know a lot of people are gonna say that I'm only saying this because I'm a classical guitarist, and that this skill is not applicable to other genres. But don't forget that I started out as a heavy metal guy, and then I started working on jazz and musical theater before I eventually got into classical guitar. So I'd had a long run of practice and learning as a guitarist in other genres. But the skill I'm going to emphasize in particular today is reading, and specifically sight reading. I think that, well, I tell all my students that guitarists that know how to read are guitarists that get paid. And so if you want to be a professional guitarist, no matter what genre, I think being able to read notes and read music is an essential thing to get you more opportunities, right? So if you're a rock guitarist, for example, a lot of opportunities that might come up beyond an original band are going to be like cover bands and wedding bands and all this. And much of the time, from my experience doing those types of gigs, people will send you the music very, very short notice, sometimes a week before the wedding, and it'll be like 30 songs, and they'll ask you to just jump in with people you've never met before who are also sight reading. And so you want to be prepared for those situations and able to take over a melody line, for example, if there's not like a horn player or a violin player or something to cover that. Additionally, with certain genres, there's going to be different types of reading skills that are applicable. So all of them, I think you should be working to read notes, and then for certain ones, like jazz and pop and rock and metal, all popular styles, we'll say, those very often are going to ask you to be able to read chords as well, and to be able to interpret chord charts in different ways. But that kind of gets into a whole other conversation. So my first paid gig as a guitarist was actually a musical theater gig, where we were doing the music of, I think it's the music of Tom Kitt, and he's the one that put together like the Green Day musical and Bring It On the musical, SpongeBob SquarePants the musical. But I was living in Chicago, and I was contacted by a music director who wanted a guitarist for this, but all the music that was presented to me was notated. So my first thought was, damn it. I don't know how to read music. And I had a loose understanding because I had taken lessons, and I'd gone to a year of music school and done some music theory classes. But any guitarist knows that most of our upbringing, if you come up in popular genres, is all tablature or all oral transcription. And so this first situation kind of put me where I needed to learn to read music, and I gained a loose understanding of it, or a better understanding of it. And then that music director referred me for another gig, which was to do the musical Spring Awakening with Loyola University. And this was my first like real pit orchestra opportunity. And these are interesting because you're backstage, and like the music director has a monitor where they can watch what's going on stage, and they kind of cue you based on how the action amongst the actors is moving. And you have to kind of watch them and then watch the score. So that was a whole like different reading and learning experience altogether. But that score was also notated, and the music was done by Duncan Sheik, so it had a lot of like alternative rock influence to it. And I had to bring 4 or 5 guitars to the performances every time, and the score would say like nylon string guitar, and then electric guitar with a single coil that has delay and all these things, and then it would be notated music. And the particularly challenging thing was that I also had to have 2 guitars that were tuned to different things, and off the top of my head, I can't remember what the open tuning was, but that was also notated, so it wasn't tabbed out for me in any way. And that was a huge challenge to get the reading. Fortunately, they'd given me the music as much in advance as they could. I think they had given me about a month to look at it. So so some of those things I was able to really just puzzle out and put together. But yeah, so those were kind of being thrown into the fire with reading, but I made money doing so, and each one, because I put a lot of effort into it, kind of led me towards yet another opportunity to play music in a setting where I needed to read. And eventually it got me to where I was hired to teach guitar lessons at some local schools or local lesson studios when I moved to Colorado. And that was kind of when I really kind of got the motivation to just really start learning to read music, because I was getting a little frustrated with the general approach to teaching guitar, which for rock music was that you just kind of ask the student, what do you want to learn? And they come in, and then next week, oh yeah, my dad showed me this song, or I saw this on YouTube, let's learn this. And you end up just tabbing things out because the student doesn't have reading skills, and because you're not imparting reading skills, everything is just continually transcribed by listening or by downloading tabs, which are very often inaccurate and all. So I wanted to make myself a kind of unique teacher, in that I would emphasize reading notes to rock guitarists, and there was some degree of success with it. And I think the students I had that really gravitated towards it were ones that were interested in things like musical theater, or maybe interested in going on to music school. So with that, as my skills improved with reading, I decided for myself to go back to school and complete my undergrad in guitar performance, and then go on to get a master's in guitar performance. And there's a whole other story as to why I chose classical, but it was really just a genre that I connected with because of the sort of the sonic qualities and the emotive qualities of it. But being that I chose classical versus jazz, the reading is very heavy for a classical guitarist, and so it's sort of like reading a piano score, where you have all these different rhythmic ideas going and different melodic ideas in counterpoint to each other as you play. So even when I was in my master's program, I was still feeling challenged by a lot of the reading, because it was kind of new to me, and I like to say that I'm a very old prodigy at classical guitar, because I haven't been playing very long in this style. And so being that I've only been, it's about 5 years now, studying classical guitar in that amount of time, my reading skills were much behind some of the students who had been brought up on like the Suzuki method or something. And when I completed my program, I realized that one of the biggest challenges for me to really be super successful at it was that a lot of my time was spent kind of puzzling out the music that I was reading. And I could read it, but I couldn't sight read it per se. And so the level of music that I want to learn is, it's more advanced than my reading skills. But last year, I decided that I was really going to emphasize sight reading in my skill set, not only so that I could get gigs where they require you to sight read, but so that I could also just learn more repertoire quicker, right? So I picked up I picked up some books called Sight Reading for the Classical Guitar. In program, we had used the Dodgson and Quine books, but I found them challenging for myself just based on my level of experience. So I decided to dial it back and really just start from the beginning. So I'll link this in the notes, but the sight reading for classical guitar sort of follows the typical method book formula where you do string by string and you just keep adding notes gradually. But all the exercises are about 1 to 3 lines at most, and very often there will be a specific instruction with each one, but the whole premise is that you just read the line and you move on from it, right? So it builds up gradually, but everything's really, really simple at first, and then eventually by the end of it you get to reading polyphonic notation. And yeah, so I went through those. I would just set a timer for 15 minutes a day, and just make a small goal. Just at least I sight read today, right? And then when I was finished with those books, I picked up the it's these Royal Conservatory books, because I'd never gone through these actually, and so I wanted to just go through them both as a student and as a teacher and as a sight reader. And the preparatory one is pretty easy. I think I went through all, like the first, it's technically the first 8, but it's preparatory, and then books 1 through 8, or 1 through 7, sorry. And there's an 8th book that I got to, but sort of my schedule and everything changed, and so thusly my focus changed, but I'll be returning to that now in the fall. So my goal was just to sight read every day and do it in a progressive manner. So I chose these books because they're graded repertoire, right? Versus saying like, I'm gonna sight read some arrangements by Roland Dion's, and then ending up just struggling through it and not actually sight reading. So I've already discussed a little bit that learning to read can help you in getting gigs, and it can also help you in obtaining repertoire, right? It helps you to learn it faster because you don't struggle saying, where do I play C again, or what note is that? You just get to a point where you kind of intuitively, like the page is a signal to your brain, which signals your hands to play wherever you play. So there's those benefits. I think another benefit, just on a very practical level, is that it opens your world up as a guitarist to so much more music than you would have access to if you just relied on tabs, or even just relied on your ear or learning by rote. So I don't disparage anyone to learn tablature. In fact, in my program that I did at Lamont, the one of the guitar courses is all about the history of tablature and learning to interpret all types of tablature that we've used throughout the evolution of the guitar. So being that we do have all that music, being able to read both tablature and notated music and chords, and maybe even alphabeto systems and French tablature, we end up having access to possibly more music than any other instrument has access to. So I think rather than being the most limited guy in the room, you should work to be the most versatile and the smartest guy in the room. And you can do that by learning to read notes. So the other parts of it are that if you're, I hear a lot of people saying that one of my goals is to map the fretboard, and uh, then they'll come in to a lesson and say to me, for example, yeah, I want to map the fretboard. Can we do the caged method? And the caged method it's fine, right? But it's sort of like reinventing the wheel and creating like another system that you have to learn, where you might as well just learn to read music, right? And then maybe supplement that with music theory. Because caged method just it teaches you how to read these particular diagrams, and then tries to teach you music theory, but it doesn't really convey pitches to you, basically, and it also doesn't give you a lot of other skills that reading notes would. So with reading notes, and especially if you go through like a method book or a graded repertoire book, you're going to progressively map out the fretboard anyway, and then you're going to be put through all these musical experiences that inform your playing, and they inform your style. And hopefully you'll also learn just some tricks that you might be able to implement, like if you're a jazz guitarist or an improviser of some sort. So the final one that I think is really useful, or the final aspect of reading music that's really useful, is that it helps you, and this is sight reading that I'm referring to now. Sight reading helps you to learn performance practice. So there's a difference between reading music and sight reading music. When we read music, we might be in like a rehearsal mode where we're saying like, this part's difficult, let me puzzle through it, and we might do it in a way that we just keep repeating and keep correcting errors. Whereas sight reading asks us to take a piece and maybe quickly scan through it. So like I might open this up and I might look at this one here and just quickly scan to see maybe the contours of the music, what's like the typical device that's going on. Is there a rhythmic motif or something like that? I'll take that into consideration. I'll look at the key signature, the time signature, and then I'll just give it a go. I'll just try and play it to the best of my ability, as though I was playing it for a performance, right? And when we practice sight reading like this, it asks us to keep the momentum pushing towards the final goal of the music without going back to correct mistakes. And the more we do this, the better our actual performances can get, because we understand that the continuity of the music is about the rhythm and about the melody working in concert, rather than about us getting the right notes or making sure that that harmonic or that note are completely audible, right? So we've all had the experience where we're playing something and then it's like, that note didn't work, let me go back and fix it. This happens particularly often when we're playing solo, right? Because we're only accountable to ourselves, and very often we're most lenient with ourselves. So if you practice sight reading, you'll greatly develop this skill of just keeping your music moving towards its goal. Okay, so those are just some of my opinions on why it's useful. I think you should always question somebody that's suggesting that you shouldn't read music, and then they follow that up with, I have a better way. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. You should endeavor to read music because it's a valuable asset in your guitarist skill set and your musicianship skill set. If you work on it in conjunction with some music theory training, a whole lot more is going to come to light as far as your understanding of harmony, musicality, and structure of the pieces that you work on. I already mentioned a few of the sight reading resources that I've used. So sight reading for classical guitar, I think even rock and jazz guitarists can use that book. It actually doesn't get into the polyphonic notation for quite a while, and being able to read that, I think, is really useful for anyone anyway. Then I also mentioned the Royal Conservatory books. This is the Classical Guitar Repertoire and Etudes. The other resources that I use, I try to keep the reading studies that I do at a much lower level than what I can actually play. That way the demands on my technique while I'm sight reading are not so great that I stutter throughout the whole thing. And so some other resources that I use, there's like these Mel Bay modern method for guitar books. These are meant for jazz and popular styles, but the thing I like about this is that it does have a lot of kind of chord solos or chord melodies in it, and it takes you through all the keys. He actually released one that's I think it's called the expanded edition, and so each book originally was about 40 pages, so each volume, and the expanded edition is like double that. So I think if you were to play through the entire thing, by the end of it, you'd have played through 1,000 pages of music, which is pretty great. And it'll take you through all the keys, all the positions. It even gives you different ideas for accompaniment styles. And so as you're learning to read, you're also getting a lot of lessons on harmony, different styles. Like it has a lot of like bluegrass, Irish music, and jazz, as well as classical. Like there's a ton of homages to Carcassi and Fernando Sor. He also has a method for classical guitar, and you can get the complete edition of that, which it sort of takes a lot of the exercises from the jazz books, and then either adds harmonies or just gives you indications for right hand fingers. So it's useful in that as well. And then I also have a couple Berklee books that I use. There's like the Modern Method for Guitar is another one. You can just take that and start sight reading through it, same way I mentioned with the others. And there's a couple of sight reading supplements for that too. And then there is a chord lab that goes along with the Berklee or with the Modern Method for Guitar books, and it basically is like a compilation of all the chord progression exercises that are within those books. And then finally, I also have a book of graded guitar duets, which is taken from the Mel Bay complete method, and it's just the anthology of all the duets that appear in there. So I'll read through those, and then I'll use that with my students a lot because it helps me keep them accountable for their reading. The last thing that you can do is once you get pretty well versed in reading, and this is kind of what I'm doing now, you can just pick up some repertoire, and a lot of sites like Strings by Mail has a really good system where they'll tell you the difficulty level of a piece, and similar with different publishers. I think Productions d'Oz will tell you like this is intermediate or this is beginner or whatever. But you can just pick up some repertoire. This is a new one that I picked up, and I was kind of surprised to be able to sight read through the piece that I picked it up for is this Homage à Piazzolla, which you can hear Roberto Osel play, and it's a great piece. But so you can pick up repertoire books that match your skill level. Of course, there's things like this, like the Segovia Fernando Soares studies, and then these books by like David Nadal, as well as Frederick Node. Those are all really great pieces to sight read through, but I wouldn't recommend picking anything like that up until you've maybe gone through at least like the sight reading for classical guitar, and then maybe a couple volumes of like the Mel Bay classical guitar method, or the Royal Conservatory repertoire books. So yeah, but because the fall is here and things kind of slow down, at least in terms of performance, I think it's a great opportunity to switch into a different phase, right? Into a different season. And for me, that means I'm gonna really work on reading. I'm gonna really work on technique, and I'll give you updates on how that's going. But then as we get into the winter, into December, January, and February, that's when I'm gonna have hopefully come to some sort of decision on what repertoire I'm gonna put in my concert for 2025. And yeah, I think it's important to just keep your momentum moving forward, keep thinking about the future of what you want to do, and keep building your skills. So hopefully you found this discussion enlightening. I know there's a lot of non-classical guitarists that are not huge champions of reading music, but I will say from my own experience that learning to read music basically that's one of the skills that I acquired as a musician that really changed my life and changed the possibility that I could be a professional musician. So keep that in mind, and I hope you keep pursuing whatever it is you want to pursue, and we'll talk to you next time.